So I'm going to start with cataloguing. I'm going to show you a few things that are new in 23.05 and 23.11 in cataloguing. So the first one of those is the ability to restrict who can edit items per library or per library group, to be more precise. So this is really useful, I suppose, for larger library systems where you've got multiple branches, and perhaps where those libraries are working a little bit more independently. So a consortia or something like that, perhaps, where you might not want everybody to be able to edit everybody else's items. So on my screen now, I'm actually logged in as my username is PTFS user, and this is a staff account that has slightly less permissions than a sort of super librarian or somebody that has full permissions. And I'll just show you how you set up this feature. So there's two parts to it, really. There's a little bit in the library groups configuration, and then there's actually permission as well to set within a staff account as well. So under Koha admin, if I have a look at library groups, you'll see I've got two groups set up here. One group has got the Centreville library within it, and if you have a look, my user is actually, my home library is Centreville. And then I have another group here with some other libraries, so Fairfield, Franklin, and Midway. If I go into this group here and just edit, you'll see there's a new line in here with a tick box for limit item editing by group. So this means essentially that this group can edit each other's items. This group can edit each other's items, but not the other way around. So I'm just going to search now for a particular book in the catalogue. So I've got a book about cupcakes and other baking goods. So here we go. If we have a look here, I've got 4 items attached to this catalogue record. And I can edit these two from Centreville. I've got my edit button here. But for Fairfield and Liberty, which are in the other group, or not within my group, I don't have the edit button. And that carries through as well. So if I edit all items up here at the top, if anyone makes use of these action buttons here for individual items, again, Centreville, I've got the edit option. And for Fairfield and Liberty, I don't. So in terms of the permission that goes along with this, once you set that up in the library groups, if I have a look at my user here, there's a new permission under set permissions. I just search for edit just to narrow it down. There's so many permissions now in Koha. If you have a look here under the edit catalogue permissions, there used to be one single permission for this. It's been split into 2. So this user has got edit items, not including items restricted by library group. And further down here, there's another one. So edit any item, including items that would otherwise be restricted. So if somebody was a cataloguer for the whole consortia, they could have this option here and they would be able to edit any items. But in this case, this user can only edit items from their group. So I think particularly for larger library systems, I think this is quite a useful addition, and it's something that we've certainly been asked for before. The next thing I want to look at in cataloguing is the content warning field. So I've got this already set up to show you. Let me have a look. What was my example? Best film plays. So let's have a look. Oh, actually, what I might do is I might shift across from this user so that I can see everything. Just bear with me. Just log in. So I'm just logging in now as the user that's got full permission, so super librarian permission, so that we can see everything. Okay. So I've got a book here where I've already set up a content warning, and then I'll show you how you configure that to work in the background. Oops. Search for catalogue record rather than user. Okay, so the best film plays. You can see here within the catalogue record, we've got a content warning. Contains scenes of graphic violence. It's also got a little note added there as well. If I go in and edit this record, you'll see in my template, I've got a field here, 590, which is a local note field. And I've added in here my note and also a staff only note, which only shows on the staff interface to say when it was added. Come in here and cancel out of that. If we look at that record on the OPAC, again, you'll see that you can see this content warning. It's not that obvious as it stands within the bibliographic record, but you could add a bit of CSS if you wanted to increase the font size or change the color or something to make that more visible. So this can be useful, really. I mean, this was actually sponsored. This development was sponsored by one of our customers, Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust, and it was developed by our developers in the company. So Martin, who I think is on the call this afternoon, developed this sort of feature. And I think the use case mainly for Tavistock and Portman was to be able to highlight out-of-date procedures, maybe, or information within medical text, where perhaps the majority of the text was still valid, but a particular section or chapter they needed to be able to flag up and say, this is out-of-date information. But I've used it here in the context of being able to flag up if there's anything graphic or violence or bad language, perhaps if you were dealing with younger members of the public. I think there's a third sort of use case as well, which is obviously to flag up perhaps culturally sensitive information, terminology, language, etc. as well. So, there's plenty of use cases for this. In order to set it up, you do need to set a system preference. So if I go across to administration, and then it's just called content warning field. And in here, you just say which field within the mark record you want to contain those content warnings for. So you just add in your mark tag in here. The other thing you need to remember, there's a note here. You need to add that field and subfields into your frameworks as well. So it's sort of that you need to set up both. If you're not familiar with editing your mark frameworks, then obviously just log a support ticket and we can help you, or let us know before the upgrade so that we can help you do that. One final thing sort of connected with cataloguing that I'll show you very, very quickly, because I don't have much time this afternoon, is a brand new module completely called the preservation module. So this again is enabled by a system preference. And it enables you to build a workflow to help you with any preservation activities that you might have in the library. So binding is the obvious example. So this, I think, this feature was sponsored and developed by some French libraries, I think, who must still do a lot of binding. I'm not sure how many libraries in the UK send their journals off for binding these days. I think it's sort of becoming a less common activity. But then we have, as customers, we have plenty of libraries that deal with historical materials that undergo preservation at various times. So I think this might be useful for them. I haven't got time to go into it at the moment, but if we have a look at our blog post, there is a link under preservation to the Koha manual section. So in here, we've got a whole chapter on preservation. So that takes you through the whole module. And I also want to point out at this point, I'll get brownie points from Ord for doing this. But if you notice now in the Koha manual, we have these version notes, which we're starting to add, which is something that Ord's pushed through, which is absolutely brilliant. So we've only got one manual now. We used to have lots of different versions of the manual for each version of Koha. We now have one manual to rule them all, which means that we do need to put these little notes in to tell you when different features were added. So I think that's really great. So you can clearly see, oh, I haven't got the preservation module. Well, that's because I'm still on 22.11. It only comes in at 23.11. So I had to give a bit of a shout out there to the documentation team. So that's it with cataloguing, really. I'll move on to acquisitions. Pardon me. So in acquisitions, just a couple of, I haven't got much time, so just a couple of things to show you in here. First thing is with vendors, or a couple of things really with vendors, but they're very small little things that have been added. So if I go into Amazon, edit this vendor is the easiest way to show here. First thing, just an aliases field. This is new. So you can add in previous names if supplies have been taken over, subsumed into other companies or whatever, and you want to record previous names or acronyms or abbreviations. This field does come up in keyword searching. So if you're searching for vendors, it'll help you find them. The other thing I was going to show you in here was this interfaces section. So this is a new section within the vendor record where you can record details of any portals or perhaps ordering interfaces where you need to log claims for late issues for journals or anything like that. You can add the details in here, including login and password as well. So they're all centrally recorded for all of your staff members to use in here. So that's quite a nice new feature. Also under vendors, we've got this new issues option, which again is brand new feature. And here you can record any issues that you're having with a particular vendor. So I think it is tied in a little bit to the ERM module that Matt showed you earlier for recording outages or perhaps access issues to particular packages, that kind of thing. But you could use it really for any kind of issues that you're having with vendors. And then when your sort of poor unsuspecting account manager comes for their visit, you've got a nice list of of all the things that they've done wrong for the previous year that you can highlight to them. So it's a bit of a negative feature, this one, but very useful, I think, for just keeping track of issues you might want to raise. I've got one here, which is an outage for an online portal, I guess, and you can record the date, etc. You just add a new issue at the top if you want to. You can customize what types you have here. So in the authorized values, you can create your own pick list here. There's maintenance and outage. I've just added damaged goods and late delivery because those might be things that you want to record from a book supplier, particularly if you're repeatedly not receiving deliveries on time. You might want to start recording that. So just to start an end date and then a free text notes field. So another useful little thing. Couple of things in orders then, very briefly. I know probably Ord's looking at the time, but I do want to leave enough time for people to ask questions. So I am definitely going to finish in a minute or two. I'll stick with Amazon, just have a look at one of their baskets. I've got a basket already set up here with a few items in it. First thing to show you is that you can now actually add quantities to existing order lines, which you couldn't previously do. And I hadn't actually registered that you couldn't previously do that. But once you've got a basket with order lines in it, if you click on modify, you can now add extra items in here to that order line. Previously, you had to sort of add a new order line. There is a proviso to this. You can only do that if you have a particular system preference called create items, and if that is set to create your items at this point. So if you create your items when you create your basket and when you create the order line, then you can use this. Otherwise you can't. So you can choose to create items when you're cataloging or when you're receiving items as well. So it wouldn't work in those cases. So here, for example, I can just add in another item here, just say add item. It will increase my quantity up to 3. Keeps the same fund. You have to keep the same fund in this case. And save. And now within my order, I've got that quantity of 3. So it is quite a really useful little thing if you sort of have to add extra copies to existing orders. The other thing to point out very quickly is if, no, I don't want to add to basket. If I close that basket, yes, so I'm sending that basket off, I'm closing it. If I go back in, I can now actually cancel an order from within a closed basket. So previously you had to reopen that basket, cancel your order, and then close it again. So this is quite nice, really, because once you reopen a basket, it updates the opened and closed dates on and things like that. So it's really nice to be able to just cancel that from a closed basket. The final thing I had to show you is actually the best feature, if you like, I think, certainly of these latest 2 versions, which is the ability to multi-receive. But I know that we're getting short of time. And Janet McGowan, another of our colleagues at PTFS Europe, has already done a really in-depth Womb on this subject already, so I'm not going to demo that today, but do have a look at that that Womb, that What's on Your Mind video, because it shows how you can now receive in bulk. So you go into your pending orders, you can just tick the individual orders that you want to receive, and then you can work through those one by one on a separate screen without having to go in and receive each order line separately, which you needed to do previously. So for those of you that do receiving, you'll realise that that is a game changer, really, because it really speeds up the process.